Welcome to Warfighter Advance, Coming Home at Last, a podcast by and for veterans. Warfighter Advance is an organization whose mission is the successful reintegration of every warfighter. I'm Michael Arndt, a Vietnam combat veteran and a member of the board of directors of Warfighter Advance. Welcome to this episode of the Warfighter Advance podcast, Coming Home at Last. Today, our guest is John Recore. John is alumnus of the Warfighter program and now has returned as a mentor. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
To begin with, John, tell us a little bit about your military history.
Okay. Basic training, 1985, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, so Army. Had a college degree already, so I got sent to Fort Benning right after my AIT. Became a lieutenant, and then a combat engineer lieutenant. So I went back to Fort Leonard Wood for the engineer branch training, then back to Wisconsin. It was a guard unit. In 1990, the Army decided to take its budget cuts out of the Guard and Reserve. All Guard combat engineers went away. So I'll use a Navy term. I got decommissioned. Huh. So went back as a Specialist 4. Then I got promoted to E5 right away. And then I went to the NCO Academy, got promoted to E6. And I've been an enlisted guy ever since. So moved to Montana in 1991. And they did the same darn thing to me. So all the combat engineers, they were mechanized, went away. Army likes to do that, I guess. So a very smart colonel in the Air Force, Red Horse guy, came around to all the units that used to be engineer. We were now Bradley commanders. So, jumping out of a vehicle that everybody wants to shoot at. And asked if any of us were interested in, yes, we're going to sleep in the field. Yes, we're going to have our own weapons. You're going to have concrete floors in the tents. You're going to have AC. You're going to have power everywhere we go. That's the first thing we do is set up the bed down. Who wants to go? And everybody went. So he got 125 people right out of the chute. Didn't lose any rank. That was the start of my Air Force career. That was 1995. Did that. I was a heavy equipment guy, so built runways everywhere. The main mission is recovering cratered out runways to get the air mission back. And then, so fast forward, made E7. Then I made first sergeant. You can only be a first sergeant for 6 years in the Air Force. So when I finished as a first sergeant in 1995, I didn't quite know what to do with me, and I didn't quite know what was next either. I ran into a friend who was they called them chaplain assistants at that time. And he said, "Have you ever thought about being a chaplain assistant?" And I said, "Well, tell me what a chaplain assistant is." And he said, "Think first sergeant, but instead of for a squadron, you're for the whole wing." And I'm like, "Oh, that appeals to me. People stuff, that kind of thing." So did that, went to the schoolhouse in 2006, graduated. I was E7 with gray hair amongst a whole bunch of E4s and E5s, Air Force, active duty. Scared the daylights out of them, I think, but we got through it very well, and then embarked on my career. And I never planned on going for 35 years, but I started because I was in a position to do that. I went to launch school, so I was 6 months there, 6 months home. Launch school is the Army hospital, the theater hospital, where the people who aren't stable enough coming out of theater have to stay and get stabilized, have surgery, that kind of thing. So I went in, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, and then I went to Iraq in 2011. Worked for the Air Force Chief of Chaplains, running the chapel at Balad. Plus we had our job during that time was to close down the base and hand it over to the Iraqis. Ran into a classic oops. We don't ever think about, the different sects of Muslim, for example, right? So the folks who built the chapel on Balad were not the same sect as the folks that were taking over the chapel. So we had to figure out, because you can't burn a Quran, can't burn the prayer rugs, So we had to figure out how to arrange a handoff. What ended up happening is going to civilian. So we developed a protocol on how to do that. That got noticed, and then when I got back, I got offered a full-time job in Washington, D.C., and I finished up my career there. I started out guard bureau managing the career field, and then went to the Pentagon and did the same thing there.
Well, what a journey. What a,
Yep.
with lots of variety. So, what brought you to Warfighter?
Mike Norgren, right? So we overlapped 3 times at launch duel, and that was one of those situations, and I said it last year when I was here a year ago. I didn't know I needed it until I got my eyes opened by Doc, and then I knew I needed it. I had a lot of time had elapsed since I had been there. And of course, at a certain rank and certain level of maturity, I always had the ICU docs at launch, or chaplains at launch duel, the theater hospital at Balad, and we had a Polish priest, awesome guy. We were air mobile on Sundays. So we'd do services on Saturday, hop in the helicopter, and just make our way to all the FOBs as our footprint shrunk there. So that was interesting. And then we got forward deployed, moved everything out, did the handoff. We were at an undisclosed location in Southwest Asia. We weren't supposed to be flying F-16s out of Kuwait, so undisclosed location it was. And then, I'm going to sidebar for a second. So the thing I love and hate about the internet is everybody gets on at night, because on Balad you could FaceTime every night. And, you're trying to deal with a broken car, a kid that's not behaving, something went wrong in the house, wife is selling the house and you're going to come home to nothing, that kind of thing. At our location in Kuwait, we didn't have internet for 12 weeks. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Volleyball games, all the MWR stuff just took off. Everybody was doing that. We didn't have hot meals either. The company that was supposed to keep the base warm didn't do anything remotely warm. So our plumbers and electricians went to work, all of that sort of stuff. We were moving furniture around, that kind of thing. So come back home, start working in D.C., which was interesting. I was the financial, fiscal, and contracting officer at that point. Had to do all of those classes. And then I got offered the career field manager job with not quite enough time to keep chief on before I retired. It's like 60's the age out, and they don't ever extend enlisted guys. So it is what it is. I did the job, worked very closely with the active duty reserve. We were 3 Ps in a pod, all of the chiefs, and it was an amazing career all the way around. When I got back to Montana for the last year, I got assigned to NORAD US Northcom, and I was coordinating disaster response at that point, hurricane response, forest fire response, that kind of thing. So I had that skill set too. So that's my career in a nutshell.
What happened when you came to Warfighter Advance for the first evolution?
Like I said, I didn't think I needed it. So the first couple days, I was like, yeah, this is interesting. I mean, I was typical VA story, right? So they had me on a bunch of medicine, and when Doc had the brief she had today, I was like, holy cow, they're trying to kill me, right? So we talked. She told me, you can't just stop taking these things. She gave me a little bit of info on how to talk to my VA doc about that. And I got lucky with the VA, drew the lottery. He's a community practice doc for 15 years, and he took over a vacancy at the VA. And he was my family practice doc when I would go for medical care at community hospital. So we already had a relationship built. And we had a conversation about these things. I shared with him some of the books that Doc gave us. And we've been working steadily since then to make things go away that we can make go away, that kind of thing. So Gabapen's gone, a couple other things are gone, that kind of deal. But when the light bulb went off, and I'm a slow learner, I'm half Polish, so when the light bulb finally went off, and Mike had rounded up a whole bunch of launch duel alumni, all Marines, didn't have any other Air Force launch duel alumni, and I had worked with all those guys over there on my numerous rotations. And he says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Oh my God, like the wool's pulled back. I think I can advocate for myself. I know how to advocate for myself. I'm not a shrinking violet anyway, but with MD, I had to learn was not major deity, not even minor deity. You have to ask those questions and advocate for yourself."
So now you're
Yep.
back
Yep.
being a mentor. What's that experience like?
Wow. Completely different lens. And it's when I left last year, told Doc, my schedule's crazy. My wife and I are executing our retirement plan, so we travel once a quarter, not small travel, big travel, that kind of thing. But I said, if it falls right in the cycles, I'd love to come back. And reached out to her beginning of the summer, and I said, "Do you have any windows in the fall?" And she said, "September, I need somebody." So here I am. But it was helping guide the group is such a different role. I just have one person in the cabin. So there's 2 mentor trainees and myself. But I'm kind of a people guy anyway. So I circulate throughout the group. I'm pretty good at reading people. So if it looks like somebody's struggling a little bit, we'll go have a talk. Maybe it's first sergeant thing. Maybe I'm just tuned or wired that way. I don't know. But it's been amazing to watch. Now we're on day 3 now, or 4, I guess. How the group gelled, communication's coming along, but just to watch that as not being a participant, watch that blossom. I think everybody needs to get this thing. I truly do. It'd be nice to have some satellites out there, probably save on the travel budget, but you've only got a core number of staff, and you don't want to put them on the road and that kind of things. I don't know how realistic that is, but it's an amazing program. I'm going to make some referrals when I get back to Montana. I worked at the Pentagon for a long time. I'm going to Chief of Chaplain's retirement ceremony in a couple days, and I'm going to recommend that he send his staff here. If you guys can deal with some, brigadier generals and that kind of thing. And they're all, they'll fit in and do the events and climb and all that kind of stuff. And anybody else that'll sit still long enough for me to tell them about it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you for talking to us today, and
You're welcome.
Thank you for your service to Warfighter Advance.
It was an honor to serve, and I'm going to be back.
Great. Welcome to a Mindful Minute with a Mentor on Warfighter Advance podcast, Coming Home at Last. Joining me today is Brian Gregory, who is bringing to Warfighter and has brought to Warfighter an interesting and very helpful tool. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. And yes, I've been supporting Dr. Vietton's program here for the last 6 or 7 years, and supporting it with the Alpha-Stim.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Alpha-Stim?
Absolutely. Alpha-Stim is a regulated medical device that's FDA cleared to treat anxiety, insomnia, and pain. The device has over 40 years of success, and within the military community, both VAs and the Department of Defense, it's been utilized in both behavioral health and pain management for the past 2 decades.
Wow. And so tell me a little bit about how Alpha-Stim works. And I see that you brought an
Sure.
example of it.
The Alpha-Stim has 2 various applications. One, both non-invasively. One, you have mild ear clips that attaches to your earlobes. Sends a very rhythmic current through the brain and actually helps balance out some of the electrical circuitry that may cause symptoms of anxiety and insomnia and other behavioral health concerns. The other application is we have the ability to direct the stimulation to any peripheral area of the body for pain management. So it can be extremely beneficial, as many have found, veterans, where the device is used in both pain clinics and behavioral health clinics.
I've talked to a lot of the members of Warfighter Advance who've gone through the evolution and have used the Alpha-Stim. What have been your results from these veterans as they come through?
I guess probably the general thought is about 80 to 90% effective, but working with Doc V's participants through the EVOs, we're probably batting about 1,000.
Wow.
Most every individual that have utilized it has seen some significant impact from this device. And obviously being non-pharma, so it has the safety value of an alternative that doesn't have the side effects or the potential risk of addiction that pharmacology offers as well for both behavioral health, psychotropics, and for opioid use.
That sounds really wonderful. Well, thank you for talking to us about Alpha-Stim today, and also thank you for your contribution to Warfighter Advance.
It's certainly been my honor to be part of the program, and thank you for having me on.
This has been another episode of Mindful Minute with a Mentor on Warfighter Advance podcast, Coming Home at Last. Thank you for joining us for the Warfighter Advance Coming Home at Last podcast. Warfighter Advance envisions a world where warfighters are fully restored through a non-medical process. To achieve that vision, Warfighter Advance sponsors 6 7-day training sessions each year to which veterans and active duty service members can apply, and for no cost to the warfighter. If you or those you know are struggling with issues related to reintegration, please contact us through our website. We are dedicated to lead the way so that every warfighter has the information, tools, and support they need to successfully reintegrate. Until next time, this is Michael Arndt on behalf of Warfighter Advance.